Batman stops holding back in this comic, and the ending of this is gonna blow your mind. So what this does is this initially opens up with Batman basically in hiding, talking to Zur-En-Arrh, which we will explain because I don't want to leave you guys hanging. Now, if you guys want to actually see what happened in these comics, make sure you check the Batman playlist at the end of this video. But the quick and dirty explanation here is that Batman's in hiding because of a story called Gotham War, which was a really, really terrible story. No wonder he's in hiding, probably hiding from the story itself, but also because he's currently battling Zur-En-Arrh. Now, Zur-En-Arrh is a persona of Bruce Wayne, and it's one that he didn't know he had. In fact, we didn't know he had it until there was a story called Batman Failsafe, and that'll actually become an important part of this, and we'll talk more about that as we get through it. But in effect, Zur-En-Arrh had built Failsafe, and the nature behind Zur-En-Arrh is that he is essentially the persona that manifests whenever Batman is too traumatized. But now that the persona has manifested, it's always trying to take control of Bruce Wayne's mind. Now, the other thing that Bruce is doing here is he's hunting for the Joker, and this is where the ending is going to blow your mind because we're going to talk about that here in a little bit. But what this does is this actually references Justice League number 50 in the sense that Bruce Wayne isn't looking for just one Joker, he's looking for the three of them. Now, why does that matter? Because in Justice League number 50, as part of Darkseid War, Bruce Wayne learned there were three Jokers. There was a story that was written called The Three Jokers by a guy named Jeff Johns. It looks like DC's ignoring that. And more recently, there was a story called Joker, the Man Who Stopped Laughing, which doesn't really seem to apply here either. And in fact, that's really more about imposter Jokers as opposed to three actual Jokers. But what this does, right, this journey on the hunt for the Joker and all that kind of stuff, it leads Batman to a crime scene where a guy by the name of Wilfred Lemurler has basically been strung up. Right now, this guy, of course, is the heir to the Play East Toys fortune, but the way he's been strung up between the lights and everything else, it's all done and all adorned with bats. And in fact, there's actually a giant N written on the ceiling in blood. Now, what's the first thing Batman thinks of when he thinks of N? He thinks of a map. And so what he ends up doing here is he actually looks at the way this guy's strung up. He realizes it's bats attached to a ceiling. And then when he takes the way those bats are arranged, applies them to a map, he realizes each one of these bats is in a location that he visited as he was becoming Batman, when he was training and all that kind of stuff. And so what ends up happening is this journey takes him to the home of a woman named Rosa Lemurler, right? The actual matriarch of Play East Toys. And as he tells us, time went by, the company and her children moved beyond dolls, and Rosa was left behind. A recluse for the last 20 years of her life, she never left her mansion. It was just her alone with her dolls. And it's actually kind of horrifying, right? Like, it's literally like a scene from that movie Dead Silence with the old woman and her ventriloquist dolls. It was pretty creepy. Now, of course, as you would expect in a situation like this, all these dolls start attacking Batman, and they do it in a variety of different ways, right? Like, they're blasting him with flamethrowers and stuff like that, but a giant human-sized doll comes out of nowhere. Now, of course, Batman basically helps this guy understand his place in the bigger picture by beating him within an inch of his life. But when his helmet flies off, it's Joker paint. Right now, it's not the traditional Joker paint, it's more the henchman paint. But this guy says, he took me back after everything I did. He took me back. Right now, what's really cool here is we're given the identity of this guy, which is Floyd Shannon, one of Joker's old goons. Now, I'm not really sure why this guy's given particular attention. It's not like he's the henchman from, Brian Azzarello's Joker one-shot comic or anything like that. But the fact remains here that Batman makes his way through as all this goes down. And what he ends up doing is basically coming across like this kind of really creepy caricature, right? This mannequin that's laying in the bed with a TV for a head. And what he ends up seeing is that the Joker is interrogating a woman. And in fact, this woman's name is Lucy. And Lucy was in effect a kind of cat burglar, right? One of the people that contributed to Batman's training in learning how to be like sneaky and stealthy. But what's so crazy about this is that while Batman's in this room watching this, he realizes the Joker is in the ceiling looking down at him. It looks pretty wild, kind of creepy. I love it. Like, I absolutely love it. Of course, Batman flies through the ceiling, but what ends up happening is the voice of Zur-En-Arrh manifests for a split second, right? Batman's talking to himself. He's like, thank God Lucy's free. Now I can focus on him, throw him in a pit. And the voice of Zur-En-Arrh says, for 1,000,000 years. So it's always kind of like influencing, trying to take control of Batman. And so what he ends up doing is he actually comes across this just really twisted makeshift setup that the Joker had put together of basically some of the most horrendous moments in Batman's history. Of course, the first one is the death of his parents. The second one is the death of Jason Todd during Death in the Family. The third one is the death of Alfred during the events of, City of Bane in Tom King's Batman run. And of course, the last one is the perceived death of Catwoman. And it's one of these things where it's kind of like, it's the happiest days of your life, that kind of thing. Now, what's really interesting about this is it's the Joker commentating on like the nature of Batman, right? Because what is Batman if not a guy who finds happiness in misery, right? Batman doesn't know how to be happy. If Batman woke up one day and he discovered a genie and he rubbed the lamp and the genie's like, I can grant you one wish. And Batman says like, I wish I could be happy. The genie's gonna like do its magic, move its hands, and then cock its head to the side confused and say, that's weird. It doesn't seem to be working, right? Batman is incapable of happiness. And so because of that, you have this really interesting kind of back and forth where the Joker says that nagging butler buzzing in your ear, telling you to slow down all the time, bam, dead. Funny, isn't it, Bruce? When someone holds you back, they just disappear. I'm starting to suspect you're the real killer. So the obvious question now is, who's next? Aren't they all in your way now? All your little bat chums. And basically what the Joker's saying here is it sucks to be associated with Batman because when you're friends with Batman, you die. And so it's a really wild kind of situation here. I really enjoy it. But what's so fascinating is that as they talk, the Joker's talking to Batman, but not really talking to Batman. Right? He kind of references the events of Joker, the man who stopped laughing, and talking about a kind of identity crisis and different things like that. But he says, I want to fight the real you. And where Bruce Wayne's like, wait, what are you talking about? You end up realizing that the Joker has kind of been emanating a gas inside this room, which doesn't really shut Batman down in his entirety, but it seems to remove his inhibitions. And in fact, Batman is kind of in the sunken place. For those of you guys who have seen Get Out by Jordan Peele, it's effectively that, right? He just kind of gets trapped inside of his own mind, and he takes away control of his ability to control his own mind. When that happens, Zur-En-Arrh manifests. Now, this guy is Old Testament, right? Like when Joker says, I want to fight the real you, that's what he's talking about. Unlike Bruce Wayne, who always holds back and he doesn't kill or anything like that, Zur-En-Arrh has no reservations, right? Like he will help you finish with all your living and be home in time for cornflakes. And that's the guy that Joker wanted to fight. So Zur-En-Arrh manifests, immediately uppercuts this guy, right? He's just like, no more victims. Tonight I'm going to kill you. And so literally Bruce Wayne is trapped inside his own mind, only to turn around and find out that he's not alone, that instead he's surrounded by all these multiversal versions of Zur-En-Arrh. Now, here's the kicker, right? Kind of referencing that multiversal story. That was a story that took place, which we did cover, and again, it's in the Batman playlist, where in effect, Bruce Wayne was jumping through the entirety of the multiverse. When that was happening, he was coming across all these different multiversal versions of himself. Of course, that story was released in time for The Flash, I'm pretty sure. But there's like Batman Beyond here, right? Like the old Michael Keaton Batman, Adam West, Batman the Animated Series, The Dark Knight, right? The old like Justice League version. I mean, hell's bells. There's even the Batman from like the Adam West intro. So I mean, like there's all kinds there's all kinds of Batman here, right? Like just everyone that you could possibly imagine. So now Bruce Wayne has to effectively fight these different variations of his own mind, while Zur-En-Arrh is just kind of running free out there within the city and within the real world, facing off against the Joker. Now the cool thing here, right, is that Joker literally makes this comment. He says, no matter which Batman I'm dealing with, you're all relentlessly predictable, right? But here's the thing that he's not prepared for, the Joker himself isn't really prepared for: the relentless nature of Zur-En-Arrh. Is he predictable? Kind of. But Zur-En-Arrh is also representing a little bit of chaos here. He's not quite, the Batman who laughs, but he also doesn't hold back in the same way that Bruce Wayne does. This guy will keep coming for you until he finds you and until he kills you. And that's what took the Joker by surprise, because he's just like hounding this guy in the extreme. He's not like buying into the Joker's game. He's not doing the cat and mouse thing, which is why you see this just flabbergasted look of shock and surprise on the Joker's face when Zur-En-Arrh just comes bearing down on him and is just like, time to die. Because what he does is he immediately grabs him and just starts pummeling him, right? Just starts fighting him. And he's like, maybe I don't kill you. Maybe I just snap your neck, right? Snap it just right. Snap it so that you can't move. Snap it so a machine needs to breathe for you, right? So it's one of those things where he just kind of allows all of his anger to just kind of let loose in that moment. Almost like a Punisher becoming the Batman, if you will, right? And Joker's just like, I love it, right? Now this is a fight. Relishing it, right? Leaning into it, all that kind of stuff. Now, there is a moment where Lucy does show up, right? Lucy Chesson appears to Zur-En-Arrh, not realizing it's Zur-En-Arrh. And she kind of tries to talk him down, right? Because she realizes this is not the Bruce Wayne that I know. The Bruce Wayne that I know is reserved. This guy's calm, right? This guy's able to keep himself composed. He doesn't lose control on Batman like that. And so once she starts to realize what's going on, and even Batman himself in this fight with his multiversal versions, which we'll talk about here in a second, even in that instance, right, where he kind of momentarily takes control of his body and just kind of explains to her what's going on, right? You've got to run from here. The Joker, he'll kill you, and I'm trapped inside my own mind. Her response is, yeah, but you're Batman, right? If there isn't an obvious way out, you will make one, right? You will find one. You always come out on top. And in that moment, that's when Zur-En-Arrh manifests again. Now, the interesting thing about this is that it's not as though Zur-En-Arrh ignores any and every kind of loyalty that anybody has to him. Instead, he seems to truly care for Lucy because she is a core and integral part of his existence, right? The person, or at least one of the many people who trained Batman. And I don't know if I'd go so far as to say there's a kind of mother-like figure there, but I will say the relationship between the two is pretty close. But jumping back over to the fight between Batman and his multiversal selves, I mean, this is pretty cool, right? It's kind of fascinating because what we end up finding out here is that with the Zur-En-Arrh personality always being there, but kind of lingering in the background, and Batman himself not even being aware of its presence, that in every single universe, every Batman has that kind of personality just lingering in their own mind. Sometimes it activated and sometimes it didn't. But what Zur-En-Arrh did is that as Batman was jumping through the multiverse, Zur-En-Arrh was waking up all those different personas, because unlike Bruce Wayne, again, who is reserved and all that, Zur-En-Arrh is just like, win by any means necessary, beg, borrow, steal, and kill, whatever you have to do in order to quote unquote make the city safe and to make the world a safer place, right? Like, even if it means becoming some kind of like a dictator and killing all the other superheroes who stand in your way, it doesn't matter. And so this fight between Batman and his personas is really him just kind of overcoming that whole thing. Now, what's also kind of cool is you get like Batman, the animated series Batman, who kind of makes a comment. He says, planning goals beyond stopping the villain of the week, all of that. He says that and dedication, no more distractions, no more Bruce Wayne. Of course, saying that in response to Bruce asking the question, like, how exactly are you guys going to make the world safer, right? Which is exactly that. Eliminating all the villains that exist out there and even destroying the superheroes who stand in their way. And so that's where Bruce is like, never gonna happen, right? So basically starts incapacitating and fighting every single one of these guys. But even when he's trapped back in his own body again, after the conversation with Lucy, when Zur-En-Arrh retakes control, he's met by the Dark Knight Returns persona. And this guy literally says, you're inferior, compromised, but that does not mean you are useless. We can use another fighter. Join us, we want the same thing, an end to crime. And in that way, it's actually an accurate statement, right? These Zur-En-Arrh personas and Batman, they do want the same thing. They want crime to end, they want it to conclude, but the reality is they just want to go about it by different ways, right? They just have completely diametrically opposing views on how that end result should be achieved. And so what Batman does, because, you know, Batman with prep time, he literally changes the entirety of the landscape because it is taking place in his own mind, and creates what's called the Memory Palace. This is a way for him to just kind of go into hiding and to kind of take pot shots at these guys in different places because he knows his mind They do not. So literally, it's just one of these things where he creates a conflict on his own terms. Take these guys out here and there. It's not that dissimilar from like villains who have robbed a bank and they've taken to the sewers and they're making their way through, and Batman's just kind of dodging in and out of different spots in order to like incapacitate these guys. It's effectively what it is. But switching back to Joker, right? Because this is when you really see Batman stop holding back, right? Joker says, okay, I think it's time for phase 2. And he says, don't you agree? But before he can even explain what it is, Zur-En-Arr's like, I don't care. Like, I have no interest in that. It does not matter to me what your goal is or what your scheme is. All of that is irrelevant. He literally just like stomps on this guy, seemingly breaking his back in the process, and then lifts him up into the air with every intention of killing him and brings him down. And if his back wasn't broken before, it is now, because he snaps the thing like Bane, right? Literally breaks his back the way that Bane broke Batman's back. It's just like ruthless, right? It is intense. Now back to Batman himself, right? When he's facing off against all these other personalities, he's taking little pot shots and hitting them where he can, when he can. For example, when he's fighting Michael Keaton Batman, right? Like he throws like acid capsules, right? At Batman himself, right? And so where Batman's surprised, he's like, more toys like that where I come from. And the response of Batman, he's like, sure, but my advantage is that I can turn my head. And like, he just like takes out Michael Keaton. Because the on-running joke, for those of you guys who don't know, the on-running joke is that because of the design of Michael Keaton's Batman suit back in the day, as dope as it was, he did not have the ability to turn his head. In the old Batman '89 film by Tim Burton, go back and watch it. The guy never ever turns his head without turning his whole body because the suit doesn't allow it, right? When he goes up against the vampire version of himself, he literally like breaks out a Bible, and that's how he incapacitates that guy. But for the Dark Knight Returns Batman, this one is a lot more interesting because the Dark Knight Returns Batman was literally just a much older Batman who was a lot more battle hardened. Technically, he was retired, but this guy has seriously beefed up. And so as they're fighting each other, Bruce Wayne realizes this is just a one-on-one knockdown, drag-out fight, right? This is not one of those where he can overcome him through like trickery or deception or anything like that. And so of course he beats the tar out of this guy, literally beats this guy within an inch of his life. And then suddenly he sees this kind of light in the distance, right? And when that happens, he realizes he can retake control of his body. And when that happens, he wakes up in what seems like some kind of base of operations, only for failsafe to manifest itself. But it's not simply failsafe, it's actually the Zur-En-Arr Batman persona that's taken control of failsafe. Now, here's the thing. This is like an unstoppable force meeting an immovable or kind of immovable object, an occasionally movable object. That's basically what this is. I know it's a terrible example, but to kind of extrapolate on this and explain the whole failsafe concept, the whole idea behind the failsafe storyline was that this robot Batman had manifested or just kind of activated as soon as it appeared that Batman had killed the Penguin, right? It was all over the news and all that kind of stuff. So failsafe activates and literally starts hunting Batman, and it's ruthless. I mean, it's like the Terminator, right? Like Batman cannot overcome this thing. And in fact, it ends up defeating him, right? And then like Batman gets teleported into the multiverse by way of a scenario that I still don't fully understand. But the kicker about all this is we end up finding out that where Zur-En-Arr had created failsafe for that purpose, there was actually a kind of hole in its programming that was designed exclusively by Zur-En-Arr for a particular purpose. And that purpose was to allow Zur-En-Arr to take over the failsafe robot and give itself a physical body. And so if you guys never read the failsafe story, this moment may kind of be lost on you, but failsafe as a robot, it was just cold and calculating. It couldn't be reasoned with. It couldn't be talked down. And that was really, in a lot of ways, its biggest strength, that it was remorseless. It would constantly hunt Batman. And this thing defeated Superman, right? Just to give you guys perspective, right? Failsafe defeated Superman. It was pretty dope, right? I mean, again, that's in the Batman playlist. It was just an amazing story. But now it's everything that made failsafe, but the personality is replaced with Zur-En-Arr, right? This guy who will do whatever it takes to win. This guy who will kill any and everybody who gets in his way. And it overtakes Batman like that. Batman's literally just fleeing, right? We end up finding out that he's actually just in a shack out in the middle of nowhere, right? But literally he just like jumps in a car and bails, which really makes you wonder, like, how in the world did the car get there? Like, was it really a circumstance where basically the Zur-En-Arr persona just jumped into a car, drove here, and then activated failsafe, and then that's kind of where we are? Because I kind of want to see Zur-En-Arr driving an old 72 deuce and a quarter. I'm not gonna lie. That seems pretty baller. But Batman's literally just like hauling tail in this thing because it's really his only way out of there. But one of the things that's also cool is he just kind of takes these little shots where he can. For example, once he realizes that Zur-En-Arr is on this car, well, then he's just going to peel the thing open like a tin can and rip Batman's head off. So what does Batman do? He blows the thing up, right? And that just kind of sends Zur-En-Arr flying off a cliff inside the car. Batman knows it's not enough to destroy him, but it is enough to buy him some time. And so what he ends up doing is going to a safe house that he has developed. And in turn, he just kind of starts building up tech because, you know, it's Batman. He's got prep time. He plans for everything. As ridiculous as that concept is, no one can plan for everything. But basically, it leads to kind of the two of them re-engaging in a conflict yet again, except this time, Batman's more prepared than he was before. But the comment of Zur-En-Arr is really telling here because he says, Bruce, your flesh is weak. So of course, you'd head back here. You need your toys now more than ever. You'll eventually succumb to your technology, becoming me in the process. Another reason why you need to be replaced. So why delay the inevitable? And so Batman's just kind of standing there and literally just activates this device that literally just blows the area up. But then Batman's thought process in response to this is really telling as well, because what he says is, Zur-En-Arr knows he's invulnerable in the body of failsafe. That makes him sloppy. I may be flesh and blood, but it's what keeps me cautious and smart, stealthy. So again, these two guys kind of have this perception that each one of them somehow has the upper hand on the other, that Bruce Wayne's body is just flesh and bone and sinew and muscle, and that's it. He can just literally have his head pop like a grape if Zur-En-Arr is able to get his hands around it. But Batman perceives Zur-En-Arr's just kind of recklessness and arrogance as his weakness. And so Bruce Wayne kind of has to step it up in the sense that he has these technological enhancements, which do allow him a little bit to hold his own, but it's not enough because as capable as he is, failsafe is just that much better. Because the reality here is it was designed exclusively for the purpose of defeating Batman. Not just defeating Batman, killing Batman if it had to. So how do you defeat a foe that was designed for the sole purpose of killing you when you're not even fully sure how it works? Because Batman was trying to figure that out in the failsafe story. What are the strengths and weaknesses? He designed it, but it was really more Zur-En-Arr that designed it and not Bruce Wayne himself. So he didn't know the ins and outs. He didn't know how to shut it off. He didn't know what its weak points were. And even now, he still doesn't fully know. And so where he is just kind of talking trash to this thing, right? In the sense that Zur-En-Arr says, you used to be the best. That's no small thing, but nothing stays the best. Champions fall. He says, that's just the nature of things, but I'm not nature. I'm forever. You're just meat. Your dream is coming true, Bruce. You stopped crime through eternity with my creation. And the response of Batman is, no, you're just a criminal. And Failsafe's fist literally just comes flying out of nowhere, clocks this guy, and knocks him unconscious. Now, this is the mind-blowing ending that I was telling you about, because Batman comes to, and what's basically a prison. Looking around, there's no windows, so he realizes that he's got to be underground. He realizes he's sharing a cell next to the Joker. And the Joker is just kind of like, yeah, man, this guy beat me within an inch of my life. It's why I'm just here in this harness, right? Because I have a broken back. But he says, so nice of you to finally join us. And he says, that personality, your little secret, Batman, your little Zur-En-Arr. And the response of Bruce, I'm through with your nonsense, Joker. You knew about Zur, you knew about my mentors. It's time you told me exactly how you're involved in all of this. And the response of Joker is, you know what, Brucey? I think I'll do just exactly that. Why is that mind-blowing? Because coming after this is the Joker Year 1. DC Comics is giving the Joker a new origin story. With that being said, guys, we're going to bring this to an end. If you guys need to get caught up, make sure you guys click this link to the Batman playlist, and I will catch you all later. Peace.